is Double G for the Fight Game Podcast post UFC 253. And Justin Nipper is with me, as well as our special guest. He's back. He must have liked us for the first show, the preview show. Jon Moxley is back. What's up? What's up, John?
Pretty good show tonight. I had a pretty good time watching it. Not as enthusiastic as I normally would be. I'd be jumping up and down, but I'm on very, very limited sleep. I flew back from East Coast today, but it was a good enough show. I kept my interest all the way through. I was really enjoying it.
Yeah, I was worried about a boring main event, what that would have done to your energy.
No, it couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah. All right, Justin, you're back with us as well. Hopefully, yes. We'll be able to keep you the whole time.
I'm here, and if I'm not here, I'm here in spirit, which means like I'm talking to you on some kind of messenger or something. But I'm here. Yeah, it was a weird card tonight, though.
What people may not have even realized on the show that we did earlier in the week is somehow Justin had muted out and had gotten kicked off, but he could hear the show. I couldn't see him. And so as John was talking, I would be in the background, like typing with Justin, trying to figure out how we're going to get him back on the show. And then he communicated to me through Messenger some of the stuff that he wanted. But I think we're good. I think everybody's logged in, and we should be good to go here. So quickly, before we get to the show, I just want to mention that Justin and Carlos Toro will be back tomorrow covering on the G1 cast, covering night 5 of the G1, which is going to start a few hours after we're done here. And then at the end of that show, I'll tag on John and myself talking about WCW Saturday Night from September 26th, 1992, featuring, check this main event out, Ron Simmons as the champion, and Barry Windham against the Barbarian, and Jake Roberts on the road to Halloween Havoc. So tomorrow you'll have all that with Justin and Carlos in their G1 recap. So John, did you have any action betting wise on this show?
I had nothing. I'm glad I did, because I did pretty bad in my predictions. I went 2 for 5.
You were pretty close with the Blachowicz fight, though. I mean, you thought he had a really good chance to win, more than most people thought.
Yeah, like pretty much what I was saying is the kind of the key indicator for me was Reyes saying, like, okay, now I know how to pace myself for 5 rounds. And he didn't come out headhunting all aggressive like he did against Jones. Mm-hmm. There could also be something to, like, against Jones, hey, you got nothing to lose. You're going against the GOAT. Just fucking go for it. And but this is like, okay, that was my second chance in a row. I got to make sure I don't make any mistakes. Maybe that fed into his less aggressive approach, or he might have just been trying to save his energy. But like we were talking about, Jan with those shorter punches, like he's got power, man. And he never even had to get into any kind of grappling. I was thinking I was like, man, if this can get to the ground late, I could see like a 3rd or 4th round choke for Jan. Never even got there. So that first like left or whatever it was he hit him with, and he saw his legs kind of go out, I was like, it's over. It's over. If he gets out of this round, it doesn't even matter. It's over. And then it ended very quickly after that. So I was very pleased with that. That was my first successful pick of the night. So I was like, Jan, came through for me.
The one fight that I had a small bet on, it wasn't really much. I just wanted to put something on the show. I actually had the over in the main event. So the under-over for the when the main event would finish was at 2.5 rounds. And the pace in the first round, I'm like, okay, great, this is perfect. And the pace in most of the second round was similar, just Adesanya staying outside, countering, Costa not really doing much. And then, bam, he throws that counter left, Costa goes down, and it was over. And I was like, oh, great, this is why I don't bet on MMA. But it wasn't even a great bet. It was like even money no matter which way you went. So I thought it was going to go a little bit longer than it did. But for whatever reason, maybe the betting gods weren't on our side. But I did go 3-2 on the night. I missed Kaikar France. Brandon Royval looked awesome, and of course missed the Blachowicz fight there. Justin, I don't know if you had any thoughts or any previews or picks on the card, but did it go similarly to how you thought, or what were some of the surprises?
Not really. For most of the undercard and the preliminaries, I wasn't familiar with the fighters too much. I'm trying to think. The Royval fight, I didn't really expect much out of that, but that was a really cool fight. Royval looked awesome. He's really impressive. And he went on the mic afterwards and was just kind of bashing himself. He's like, yeah, it wasn't that good. But I mean, he looked great tonight. That was cool. I didn't expect that. As far as the semi-main with Dominic and Jan Blachowicz, okay, I did something really stupid last night. I rewatched the Jon Jones and Dominic Reyes fight from late last year or early this year.
I think it's like February.
Yeah, okay, so it's pretty recent. So I watched it, and it's like Dominic Reyes fought a brilliant fight. Like, no lie, he really did. I had to change my mind, so I went on the Verdict app. That's what I use when I do fights, and I changed it. My initial thought was, okay, Jan could definitely win this if he gets his hands on him. He has big hammer fists. It's just like, and that's what happened. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how brilliant he fought in the past. When Dominic got rocked tonight, that one last punch where he was kind of like, he really was trying to stay on his feet, but there was no way he was staying on his feet. He was wobbling down like Looney Tunes. But it all started in that match with those middle kicks. Did you see Dominic Reyes his ribs?
Oh yeah,
he was blasting him in the same spot.
Yeah, it looked like he'd been getting beaten with a sack of oranges.
Dude,
real quick,
brutal.
Yeah, and that bruise, which it kind of looked like half like a bruise and half like a burn. Like it was there like immediately. Like I don't know, it seemed like it may have only taken one or two kicks to get like that, but that then became target practice, just like Costa's cupping on his calves. So we'll get to all the main card fights and we'll kind of talk about them in detail. But before we do, there was I kind of watch Jon Jones's Twitter during these shows because he watches everything, and he kind of does a little bit of like a play-by-play of the night as he's doing it. And I was very interested to see what he was going to say about the Reyes fight. He was not a little disrespectful to Reyes, but not really. And he was very good on Jan, but it made me wonder. I know people are like, oh, now that it's not Reyes, maybe he'll come back and fight Jan. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure a really good Jon Jones will just technically beat Jan, but at where he is right now, I was like, ugh. What if he does get hit with one of those right hands? It might not be great. What do you guys think about Jones and how he kind of relates to this whole thing? Does he come back? Does he really stay to heavyweight? Like, why would he give up his belt? Like, I was just wondering, because he's just so much. The commentators and even Jan talked about him after. What you guys thought about Jon? And John, you can go first.
If Jan goes on a tear and goes on like some 3-fight finishing tear and keeps calling him out or something, maybe. But I don't know. It seems to me like he knew he had the chance to fight Jan. He knew he could fight Reyes again. He chose to leave that behind and take on a new thing, and he's leaving it behind. I don't think it's intriguing enough or worth the risk for him to come back and fight Jan. Or maybe he thinks there's no risk at all. But then what's he going to do, vacate it again?
Yeah.
Who else is he going to fight after Jan? I think he's truly just set it aside and has moved to heavyweight. I think from what you've seen. But, you never know with people. They say stuff and they change their mind, and who knows.
What do you think, Justin?
I don't have a good answer. I don't get Jon Jones. I don't understand him. I mean, and just like, I don't understand what he wants. Does he want to fight? Does he want to make a lot of money? Does he want to do both? Does he want to be a celebrity? Does he want to party? Does he want to do charity work? I don't know who he is. So I don't invest any energy in that. Like I skim those articles and it's kind of like the same idea, just a new situation, a new fight. I don't know if he's going to stay in heavyweight. It all depends on what happens next. I mean, with UFC, sometimes just crazy stuff happens within a month, and then you have a completely different narrative. They're just selling a different fight because something happened, or the way a fight went. They base it on that.
So my take is he knows that he's got more fights behind him than in front of him. And he also knows that Daniel Cormier would have been pretty big business for him. and he looks down the light heavyweight rankings and he sees a lot of guys who are probably more along the lines of more risk than actual reward. Like Jon Jones is going to draw just because he's Jon Jones. But, Thiago Santos, Glover Teixeira, he's beat all those guys. Anthony Smith beat all those guys. Ozdemir. Like, who can he actually really do, a really big pay-per-view show against? I probably not anybody who's currently in the top 10 in that division. Maybe Blachowicz now, just because he sort of made himself on this show. But I'm sure he then looks at Ngannou and Derek Lewis and Overeem and Miocic and goes, okay, these fights are not going to be as hard. Maybe. I think some of them could be pretty challenging for him, but they're bigger names, and there is some interest whenever anybody goes up a level. People have been trying to get certain fighters to go up to the next level for bigger fights all the time, and so I think there's a natural inclination for him to go like, okay, well, this means I will make more money. The problem is with Jon Jones is he's looking at this situation and he's looking at fighting, during this time frame and thinking that, it is kind of dangerous. And is the money worth the risk? Now, the UFC's done a great job with this, with the whole bubble and such. That not quite a bubble, but the way that they do it has been really, really good. But I could also see from his standpoint, if he feels that he is, maybe he has a handful of fights left. Does he want to fight in front of no fans? Does he want to take less money knowing that, maybe there's not going to be a gate? Does he really want to finagle, contract at this point? Or does he just want to wait it out and see what happens? And so I sort of understand him from there. And he can wait because, he's the greatest fighter in their history. So there's always going to be a time for him to come back and make a big splash and be in the news and stuff. So the thing about Jones is you just hope that he keeps the news inside the cage rather than outside, because that's where we've heard a lot from him lately. Okay, so before we get to this entire main card, we want to get to our Bet Online pro wrestling question of the show. John has given us one pro wrestling question to ask it on a heavy MMA show, and this question is going to come from Paul Fontaine. Paul thought your match with Eddie Kingston on Wednesday night had a little bit of like a New Japan-ish, G1-ish feel to it, and wondered if it was intentional or if that's just sort of the way it happened, because it was a really good physical match, ended with a great bulldog choke. But he was wondering like if there was any New Japan influence purposely.
Sort of, in that I've taken a lot from just my experience in New Japan into kind of all my matches lately. But Eddie Kingston is very, very inspired, obsessed fan, like an encyclopedia on like 90s All Japan. So that's kind of his deal. And I had to get up early in the morning and do phoner media interviews, so I had flown in, so I was all tired, so I went back to bed. I was taking a nap, like 2:33 in the afternoon. Tony Khan calls me, wakes me up out of a sleep. I'm like, Tony's calling, what the fuck? I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I think this is news now, so I don't think I'm breaking anything, but he says, brother tested positive. I was just like, oh, for Christ's sake, this fucking COVID is every week this shit so and I was like, well, what about you and Eddie? And I was like, ooh. I popped up out of bed immediately. So, okay, let's do that. And popped over to the building, and like, it's just one of those things. You just two dudes just go to the ring, call finish, and just see what happens out there. Like, veteran trust and shit, just like, all right, let's just go out to the ring and see what happens. And what a pleasure to be able to do that. It's kind of a happy accident. Something really bad happened, and hopefully everybody's healthy and everything. And I don't know all the details of anything, to be honest with you, but it was fun, and it was awesome. And I truly enjoyed that. It was a nice It was a good way to spend a Wednesday night.
And hopefully we'll get to see the Lance Archer match still. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that. And it was when I heard the news, my immediate thought was like, oh, like this is a make to, you promised this really great main event, and when you can't deliver it, you got to do something maybe a little bit extra special. So seeing a World Heavyweight Championship match on Dynamite, I think was exactly that. It was a make good for the fans, and it was awesome. And like I said, the Bulldog choke just as the finish is great. You don't really. I'm trying to think of where I've seen that as a finish before, and the fact that I don't see it often, I think makes it even better. So I thought that was really great. Let's get to this UFC 253 recap. Let's start from the bottom and go to the end of the show. So our first match was Hakeem Dawodu against how did you pronounce Zubara Tukhugov? How did you pronounce it, Justin?
I pronounced it Chukov. I thought it was pronounced Chukov.
But when Bruce did it, it was like way different.
I don't know. Bruce does whatever he wants. He's always zipping around. Did you see him right in the main event? He was doing like when you do those
fist
touch your knees. He was doing the fist bumps, but he does like when you in soccer when you're warming up when you're like touching your knees, like boom, 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 boom. He was doing that. He was doing like tap dancing. He was
I don't know if he meant to do this, but he had stuck his hand out, and Paulo Costa was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna fist bump you then."
I saw him do that a couple weeks ago.
He does that all the time.
That's right. Yeah,
he does that all the time, dude. If you go to I'm sure I don't know if you've been, but if you've had a chance to be at a show live, I've had a chance to be at a couple, like not really, just like 2 or 3, and seeing like they don't have the camera on Bruce Buffer as much, they have it on the fighter when you watch it on TV. First time I was there live and kind of was watching Bruce Buffer as he was announcing, this motherfucker is going nuts. He's in full dance mode. He's jumping, twisting, turning, leg kicking. He was like Israel Adesanya on his last entrance. and I feel like there should be like a separate Buffer cam.
Oh yeah,
everything he's doing, but like he often creeps, like they got the camera on the fighter. He often gets real close. I don't know if he's trying to pump up the fighter or whatever. He creeps in close in the camera. The last style, and you see him like he's creeping in, and maybe gets a fist bump in, and you see he's always sporting a nice jacket. But Bruce Buffer, there should be camera on Bruce Buffer at all times, even if it's like a picture-in-picture in the corner.
So the like you said, the couple of I've probably been to about 6 or 7 UFC shows, but the one when I first saw him, how close he got to the fighter when he introduced him was the thing that was alarming to me. I was like, oh my God, like he gets right up in their grill as if he is introducing them for them. Like, I'm going to introduce you to yourself. Like, that's how close I'm going to get to you. But he's great. What? Just because you mentioned it, what was the most memorable UFC show you did get to see in person?
I've only got to go to a couple like while I was hurt, and I live in Vegas, and they're like here on Saturdays all the time. But I was always working Saturdays. When I was hurt, I think I went to 2 Cyborg fights. I went to Cyborg and some Russian chick who was like a lamb to the slaughter, whose name I can't even remember.
Justin, have you been to shows?
Main event, and I was at Holly Holm and Cyborg.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and it was Khabib Edson Barboza, which is really cool because we had a seat like right up front, and we were like sitting right behind Mike Tyson, and then my wife spilled a drink and all this shit, and it like went under Mike Tyson's chair, and we fucking freaked out. We're like, oh God, yeah. We were scared he was gonna get. Nothing happened though. But like Khabib, in between rounds, we were like by his corner, and he was coming up to the cage, and Dana was sitting right in front of where Tyson was. And he's beating the shit out of Edson Barboza, and he's totally relaxed and calm. And he's like, Dana, what you think about my performance tonight? Yes. And I was just like, oh man, this dude's a monster. He doesn't give a fuck. So that was pretty cool.
Justin, have you been to UFC shows?
To UFC, no. It was actually supposed to come up to Portland this year, but the pandemic, it was supposed to be that Overeem fight, whoever he was fighting in April. But I've been to like grappling tournaments. And they're really fucking boring.
Yeah.
And they're like 6 to 8 hours. And if you're with a team, because there's a lot of etiquette, it's like a amateur wrestling tournament. It's the same kind of vibe. Sometimes it's cool. There was one that I saw. Do you guys know the Mendez brothers? These jiu-jitsu, like they look almost like they're twins. Rafael Mendez and they're sick grapplers, like really high level top stuff. And they just tore through everybody for like 3 hours. And me and some buddies were just talking in the bleachers, just watching that. But it's a totally different experience, I'm sure, from UFC. I haven't been to any of those.
I thought you at first I thought you said the Menendez brothers. Like, oh man.
No. So I've definitely made that mistake that when I'm talking to them, or like when I was typing to my brother about them, Menendez, not the Menendez brothers. I don't even think they're with us anymore.
That's a different kind of violence. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little more real. It's a little more hands-on.
I think the most memorable show I was at was the Conor McGregor, Chad, speaking of Mendez. And I was in a section, and I probably couldn't avoid them, but I was in a section with a lot of Irish folks, and I was really worried after that show ended if I was gonna like get hit with stuff. So we hightailed it out of there, but it's hard. Like you go through the MGM. The MGM is just kind of hard to get out of. So there was like real worry that stuff was going to happen. But yeah, that's probably the biggest one I've been to. And
that was where he came out to Sinead O'Connor, right?
Yeah.
That was sick as fuck.
Oh, that was intense.
Oh, and the guy from Stained. But
yeah.
Oh man, I love this shit. I love the pageantry, the big fight feel. Oh man, I love it.
Actually, that's a good point, because tonight I thought there was going to be a lot of pageantry, at least for Israel Adesanya, but there was nothing. I thought, I don't know. I didn't really expect.
No dance, but I assume like the answer to everything nowadays is, because of COVID, he couldn't bring his dance partners over. My wife was literally,
yeah.
My wife was watching with me, literally. That's her favorite fighter. That's her guy, literally only because of the dance. And she was very disappointed.
A lot of people were looking forward to it, I think.
Yeah.
But he made up for it with a bludgeoning.
Oh my gosh,
he was awesome. All right, let's start at the beginning here. So first fight was ZT, as John called him in our preview show. We can stick with ZT against Dawodu. And this was technically a really good fight. And I thought ZT was going to be a little bit too aggressive for Dawodu, because we talked about this on our previous show, that the fights that I've seen Dawodu is he is almost too patient, like overly patient. And so ZT was kind of walking him back a little bit in that first round, throwing that straight right hand. He was very loose with his hands. He was throwing shots. And then all of a sudden it sort of stopped. And I think the reason it stopped is because Dawodu just lit up his calf with those leg kicks. And, I don't know if you saw his legs. His legs were gigantic. He had gigantic calves, too. And they were just a big target for Dawodu. And pretty much by the second round, like I know some people had Dawodu winning the first round. I actually had ZT winning. And then the second and the third, I had Dawodu winning. I think the third, everyone had Dawodu winning very clearly. But still, we saw the split decision. ZT had one of the cards, 29-28, and then Dawodu had the other cards. One of the judges had Dawodu taking all of the rounds. But basically by the third round, either ZT thought he had the fight won, or he was hurting from those leg kicks, and he just didn't want to get involved, because Dawodu was screaming at him at the end of the third round, just like telling him, to engage, and he wouldn't engage, and he's yelling at him. The referee says, "Stop cursing. Be respectful." It's like, what? That's the first time I've ever heard that.
That was the best. No, he literally was like it was like he was exactly as you said, very patient. And I was thinking like, okay, man, turn it up a little bit, maybe. Like, okay, and maybe he doesn't want to get taken down. I think if he could do it again, maybe the ZT would maybe try to take him down more, because. Maybe he would. It seemed like that was where he would have had an advantage. But, then it's like he seemed like resting heart rate, totally cool. Didn't even feel like he'd been hit in the third round. He just like was just like, what the fuck, man? We gonna fight? And he goes like, we say like, come on, man, you want to fucking fight? Let's go, come on, it's the fight. And the referee is like, in the like most adorable way, just no cussing. That was classic. Cussing.
It is pay-per-view. I mean, it's not like we were on ESPN. So I didn't get it. Like, I wonder if he just like thought maybe they were on ESPN or something. But it was like, so weird.
That something happened. That dude's balls twisted up in the third round. He got pissed off and he was just like, "Let's go, come on, motherfucker!" But I'm like, "Where was that in the first round, man? You might have been able to take him out. You know, maybe he could have been a little more aggressive earlier." But
Justin, I think you missed this one, right?
Yeah, I didn't catch this one, but that review sent me. I saw that, and everybody I talked to said it was great. But yeah,
I think. I mean, I think Dawodu has real potential. Like, I mean, obviously you have to be a good fighter, and I think he's kind of on his way up. But I think he's got a little bit of star potential there as well. You know, the UFC will surely take advantage of his background. You know, when we can actually have fans again. But I really like him. I think he's got something. And you know, maybe that like John said, that third round. Maybe that lights a fire under his butt a little bit. And he fights a little bit more aggressive. I mean, he fought an excellent fight, and he fought the right fight. He withstood ZT's first round of throwing a lot of bombs, and he connected with a couple, but he missed a lot too. And I wonder if maybe he did get a little bit tired of that. But Dawodu wins, and I was happy to see it, and I almost thought when I saw Khabib out there, I was like, oh no, I made the wrong pick. Like, Khabib's going to pump his dude up. But Dawodu won the fight, so I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was hoping in the third round he would start trying to Khabib the motherfucker and take him down more. But he just skated in the third round. He seemed to think he had it in the bag. I don't know why. And brother Hakeem, he was not in the mood for games. He was like, "Fuck you, let's fight." That was awesome. So, a big fan of
Hakeem.
I'm a big fan of Hakeem now. Yes.
All right, so our second fight was Sijara Eubanks and Caitlin Vieira, and this was I wouldn't say this was necessarily a good fight, but both women are very tough. And Eubanks, we had mentioned, she just fought like 2 weeks ago, so a quick turnaround for her. Vieira was supposed to have a different opponent, but Eubanks was the change at the last week or two there. And I want to give a lot of credit to Eubanks because Eubanks is just tough as nails. But from a talent perspective, especially on the striking standpoint, Vieira is just so much more fluid. She was just longer, more fluid, and it seemed she didn't even really seem to be on her A game, but it was still enough because Eubanks, Eubanks took some shots. She delivered some shots as well. I actually had Eubanks winning the third round with most of the leg kicks and a little bit more accurate striking, but Vieira was on cruise control a little bit at the end there. I don't know. It's really hard to dislike Eubanks. She's got a little bit of a toughness and a charisma to her, but she's not as good of a fighter as you would wish. Rooting for people like her. Fight was competitive though. I had Vieira winning 2-1, just like all of the judges. John, what did you think of this one?
I thought it was a really good fight. Like, and what I loved about it the most was the third round, where. The biggest thing that surprised me was how much, and I didn't know, I wasn't super familiar with either of these people going in, so I picked Eubanks based on just that she'd been more active, and Vieira had came off her first knockout loss, and she'd been out for a year, so maybe she'd be a little gun shy or kind of like take her a minute to get into a rhythm or something. Not at all the case. She came right out, got in a clinch, started doing what she wanted to do. But the thing that surprised me is how much bigger she was. She looked way bigger than Eubanks, and not that was the only deciding factor, but the thing I liked about the fight the most was the third round, because Eubanks is clearly down 2 rounds, and she's like, okay, I'm down 2 rounds. Fuck it. And she started trying to knock her out and started trying to make it a brawl and actually and Vieira's coaches were even telling her, don't get into a brawl, but she got goaded into a brawl, and that's one of those fights where I'd like to see if that was a 5-round fight. Because it was like, it was pretty close, like Vieira definitely won, but like, what if there were 2 more rounds and Eubanks kept on pouring on with that urgency. I would like Tyron Woodley to sit down and watch this fight. Be like, this is what you should have been doing for the last 15 fucking rounds of your career, dude. Like, Jesus Christ.
There was a moment where Eubanks's corner at the beginning of the third round was like, "Here's what we want from you. I want to see the left hook," and he said it in a way that I've never heard before. Put some speed on it. And so I was like, how do you put speed? I mean, maybe throw a quicker hook or shorter hook or whatever it was, but I'm sure that meant, something to her that I didn't completely understand. And right, a couple minutes into that round, boom, left hook, and it worked, and it caught Vera off guard, and that was the best shot of the fight probably for Eubanks. And really, really cool to see. A lot of times you see the corner work and they're explaining something very technical, and the fighter goes, yeah, and then they get in there and there's like nothing going on relating to what they had said. So it was kind of cool to see the coaching work there. But she only had one more round, and it was going to be done unless she knocked her out.
Yeah, she fucking tagged her. I wrote that down actually. I was like, but she took it. So only if we had 2 more rounds, maybe it could have degenerated into an even better fight.
Justin, what were your thoughts on this one?
Nothing more or nothing new to contribute other than what John said about the third round. That's when I started paying attention. That's when I was really kind of noticing the match more. There were some slow parts and I was kind of in and out, but I liked Eubanks' boxing. That was exciting to watch. It was rocking by the end of it. It was cool.
So the third fight was Brandon Royval versus Kai Kara-France. And when we had talked about this fight on the preview, I think the thing that intrigued me the most is, 2 things. One, these guys are 125-pound guys, so it's going to be quick as lightning, and everything's going to be fast. But the thing was I didn't have any real footage to watch of Royval. I think I had one fight, and then just looking at, he didn't even have a Wikipedia page. I had to go to ShareDog and kind of look at what he had done in the past. But it was pretty clear that on the ground was really where he was going to be dominant. I just figured that Kara-France, because of being in the UFC a little bit longer, the impressiveness that I saw in his previous fights, I just thought, okay, they're going to end up on the feet, and that's how he's going to beat him, is on the feet. But even on the feet, Royval knocked him, loopy a couple different times after taking a big shot. And so this, my thought process, because I did pick Kara-France, was, okay, Royval's a house on fire. He's definitely, like, that first round was amped up. Second round, we'll see where the stamina is, and let's see if Kara-France could do anything. Nope. Gets stuck in a guillotine, submits him, match is over. I was very impressed with Royval. I think Justin mentioned his interview, which is a little bit of like aw shucks, I didn't do this well and I didn't do that well. And I don't know, I think that even made him a little bit more likable, because obviously he's sort of new to this, and he just wanted, he just came across as such a nice kid. And I don't know how good he is going to be, but he beat someone who is real. And I think that will bode well for moving up in the rankings there. But what do you think about this one, John?
We both obviously picked Kai, upcoming kind of top star, top 10 in the lightweights. And like we said on the last show, this Brandon Royval was working a regular job a few months ago. Like, he's brand new, did one fight in the UFC. He actually, after his only other win in the UFC, his only other fight in the UFC, he kind of did the same thing in the interview after. He was kind of like, I didn't really fight that good, but I figured it out, and I won, but whatever. So that's kind of, I think that's just kind of his MO, which is very charming, and nice to see. And totally figured, he just because we just don't know anything about him. You got to put the money on the established veteran, and he's going to Abu Dhabi. We don't, this dude's fought in 13 countries. We don't know if he's ever been out of his own state. We don't know anything about this guy. So obviously the money. But like, man, I wish I knew more about Brandon Royval.
I know,
because this dude is my guy now. He is my guy. He doesn't he gives zero fucks. He like just coming forward, eating shots, taking shots. Maybe that's not a smart idea long term. You don't want to end up like Diego Sanchez and on the prelims in 10 years or whatever. But dude, he was awesome. we were talking about, we don't see a lot of finishes at 125 or whatever, and I'm like, then here we go. We see this crazy fight. That was like the greatest first round in quite a while, man. Like wacky left hand, fucking Judas effect, spinning back elbow. What the fuck? That was
exactly what it was.
Nuts. Yeah, that was nuts. And then I was like, oh, I thought he was gonna do some Nick Diaz fucking high off his ass Goga Plata shit. when they went to the ground, I was like, you're kidding me. He's gonna do that. I'm talking about I can't remember the Fireball kid. Whoever the hell he did the home run or Hail Mary Goga Plata or whatever.
Right.
I was like, oh, we're gonna see that, and then it's like he like shoots his quick double, lifts his ass up. I'm like, oh, he's gonna Matt Hughes the fuck out of him, and then it's like, nope. It was almost like a pro wrestling spot. Like he'd like pick him up for his move, and then he hooked a fucking guillotine, and I'm like, nah, and then he got the full body triangle, and it's like, it's over. I was like, man, everything I could want to see from a guy that I don't know anything about. That's like, you're an exciting fighter. I will pay to see Brandon Royval every single time he fights from here until he retires. Same thing as Diego Sanchez. I don't care. So 5 years from now, I'll still pay to see Diego Sanchez fight because he's earned my respect. I like this Brandon Royval, and this Kai, he'll come back. He's really good. I was thinking like, man, I hope these guys can keep making 125, and I hope one of them or both of them ends up being a champion, and they have like a trilogy. Mm-hmm. And it's like a Liddell Couture trilogy, but like flyweights, because that's what that division needs is some like I give zero fucks excitement,
Yeah. So in the rankings, I mean, Car France was 7 and Royval was 9. So you would imagine that he at least jumps over France, and then you get to the top 6 with guys like Formiga and Brandon Moreno and guys like that. So whoever Royval fights next is probably going to be a pretty big guy. So he's got his work cut out for him by beating someone like Car France. I think you mentioned sort of some of the action, and he got knocked loopy immediately. He got knocked loopy. Not only did he go down sort of like to a knee once, but he got back up and he was ready to throw his punches again, and he stumbled again like a second time. And then that's when the Judas effect came and he put Car France on the ground. But Justin, so the guillotine, we don't often see guillotine finishes anymore in the UFC. It's rare. We used to see them a lot, like, maybe 10 years ago. But can you explain why that is not? Is it just easier to defend now? People can see it coming, or like, what's the reason for that?
There's some chart out there actually that says that guillotines, I think they're the most common, one of the most common submissions you see in MMA. I think more so than an armbar too. That's just my opinion. We don't see them lately. I don't know. I think there are trends too. You can definitely see some trends if you watch or if you think about 1 year and you think about like submissions. What were the submissions this year? Like stuff like Goga Plata or certain kinds of arm locks. They're just more. I don't know why if they're more popular 1 year. But I'll look it up later. But there's some chart out there online that kind of shows that. But yeah, go ahead.
So you're right. No, you're right in that the history of the UFC, like the most submissions are neck submissions. So chokes, rear naked chokes, or guillotine chokes like that. So it's like way more than half of the submissions, successful submissions, were neck submissions. I just feel like. I've been watching the UFC pretty closely, I'd say, for about the last 15 years. And this could be just my memory, kind of, what I remember. But if you go back like to 2005, 2006, up until maybe, 10 years ago or so, I felt like there was a guillotine choke submission in like every card, maybe even more than one. But just lately, it seems like they don't go to it, or if they do, it's just so easy to slip out of it. Maybe later in fights it's even harder to put on because these guys are sweaty. But using what you just said for the history of the UFC. This is going through 2019. I'm using some data, so hopefully this data is legit. The rear naked choke is far and above the submission that counts. That's happened the most. But you're right, guillotine choke is after that, about half of the rear naked chokes, and then armbar is right behind the guillotine choke in UFC history. So that's pretty interesting. Triangle choke is there's been 68 triangle chokes through 2019. So this is pretty interesting data. Wow, I would have expected. I guess I would have expected less guillotines, but then again, if I saw them a lot back in the day, maybe they're just not happening as much, but did happen a lot earlier in the history of the UFC.
But on the other hand, the techniques really develop too. So some things that we see, like a guillotine, the thing we saw tonight, the guillotine, he kind of put him in, he jumped him, put him in his guard, rocked him, choked him out with the guillotine from that position. But sometimes we see it when the guy's on his back and it just looks different. And sometimes it kind of looks like a neck crank. Sometimes the wording is different. And definitely as the years go on, the people change the wording. But neck related submissions, if you look at it, the stats that you just read, it's like, the guillotine and RNC from the back, arm bar, it's pretty basic still. I think no matter what, I think those are the positions that fighters end up in. You're going to give your neck away. You're going to give your arm away because that's what you're using the most. It's just, I don't think it's like that really scientific. I think it's just when you fight, you're going to try to hit somebody in the head and you're trying to use your arms. And that's where a lot of the subs are going to take place, I think.
All right, so we had Jan Blachowicz against Dominic Reyes, and Reyes maybe had a good first minute of the first round where he looked really comfortable and he was throwing that kick. He didn't really throw his hands a lot. Obviously, he was trying to stay on the outside because, as we said in the preview show, Blachowicz is his way of winning this fight was getting on the inside and tagging him. And like Justin said, there was a kick to his right ribs cage, right side, and immediately a nasty bruise showed up on Reyes' side. And Reyes did not dial it up though. He stayed patient. He lost that first round, but he didn't come out of what his strategy was. But he also didn't do anything for the last 4 minutes of that round. So good round for Blachowicz. And then in that second round, he just puts his lights out. So I think there was I don't know what was the shot that kind of forced Reyes to fight on the inside, because he starts trading on the inside and that's where he just gets beaten down like hell. There was not a shot when he got
blasted in the nose and it looks like he broke his nose.
I think you're right.
I don't know when exactly because it was kind of a part of a flurry. He landed one, he saw him kind of rocked, he landed another combo. Dominic was rocked again, and then he threw some back, and there was back and forth until the end of the fight.
I think
his nose looked like shit.
Yeah, jeez.
I think he threw a high kick, and I think it landed, and so I think it gave him a little bit of momentum to try to do something else. But the second he got inside, Blachowicz' eyes got big, and he just put this dude's lights out. Ate a left hand, went down, followed him to the ground. Fight was stopped. Any other thoughts on this one, John?
Like I said earlier, he just that was the indicator for me when he said like, I figured out how to pace myself, and he didn't come out in the first round like he came out in the first round against John, using the thing that I think is the difference with him and so many of the light heavyweights that he's gone through in the rankings. He's just he's a great athlete, NFL player, whatever other sports he's done, and he took on MMA. He's just a great athlete, and it was like he tried to be some calculating mixed martial artist or something. He didn't rely on it. Just like, I wish you would have just like let loose a little more and been like, fuck it, I don't care if it's 5 rounds or 3 rounds, it's all the same. I'm gonna head kick him or whatever I'm gonna do, and throwing Blachowicz off his game. That's kind of how I pictured it. As I looked at it as like, he's this great athlete who's taken on MMA and he got a shot at Jones, and he's got nothing to lose, so he just went after him, and he looked good for a minute, then he gassed out, then he was getting beat up, and but Wojciech has got like double the amount of fights he's had. Like I said on the last show, it's like if you look at his record, it's like submission, knockout, decision, submission. There's just so many different ways he can win. He's got so much more experience. There's nothing he hasn't seen or any position he hasn't been in. I was hoping that it would get into like some grappling or some clinching or end up on the ground, and I could have seen a submission late for Jan, but it worked out even better for him. One of the things Paul Felder pointed out is that he caught one of his kicks like right at the end of the first round, and that made him gun shy about his kicks because he's trying to stay at range. That might have been where he wanted to get a little more inside. I don't know, but Jan can starch people, dude. If you get too close to him, like the Luke Rockhold, the other dude, I can't remember off the top of my head, but and now
Corey Anderson.
Oh yeah, and now Reyes, like he don't need to wind up some big giant overhand right, like he can just start you, and I like it because I like it from a just kind of a storyline perspective that like okay, he at least never lost to Jones, so I like that he's the champ, and he feels like he's like the legitimate champ. John stepped away, he never beat John, but he never fought John. So we don't know. So that's a fun fantasy thing, but he feels like he's the true champ to me. And I don't even know who he would fight next, to be honest with you.
It sounds like, if I'm reading Twitter correctly, based on some of the post-fight press conference, it sounds like maybe Thiago Silva will be next for him. But, you know, if you're Jan, you're doing whatever you can do to get Jon Jones to come back down, because that would be a little bit of a money fight for you.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think Thiago beat John too, right? I don't really remember it very well.
Yeah, I mean he did pretty well against John, but it was also a fight where John was just like so disinterested, just you know, which he can because he's so good. He can get so disinterested in some of these fights and you know not look great. Kind of like, you know, you'd see Anderson Silva do the same thing back in the day. But, I think with Jan...
As a lot of his fights are, that's why I'm more interested in seeing him at heavyweight, to be honest. Like, because you're going to go in there Francis Ngannou, you better not be disinterested, dude. You better be pretty fucking interested, because you might get seriously hurt if you're not interested. You know,
well,
I didn't think about it until you said it. I'd book this right now if they put it on the table. I'd pay for it. Jon Jones, Derek Lewis.
Mm-hmm. It could be a great opening fight at heavyweight for Jon, but Lewis hits like a truck too. Problem is you know, does he hit Jones? I'm not sure he can actually hit Jones, but the other thing about Jan is, I think with one thing about being in a division where with Jon out of it, let's say Jon's out of it, everyone is sort of, you know, from the top 5 is pretty tight, and maybe even, you know, 6, 7, and 8 are pretty close. I think the fights will be really exciting because there's no one who's going to just run away with the division. And so I think these will be pretty competitive fights. And you could even see the belt trading hands a few times where it hadn't really traded hands except with Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier since something like 2011. So while that may not be the same division anymore, just on a name value and like a talent level with Jon out, it could be more exciting just because of the competition and you know the guys are a little bit closer, 1 through 10 or whatever. Justin, do you have any last thoughts on this one?
On Jon and Dominic Reyes? Not. It's like I just didn't expect it to end so quickly.
We only had one guy in our, so we do pick'ems for the website. We only had one person pick Jan, and it was my 19-year-old. I don't even know if there was a reason why he picked Jan, but he's the only one out of the 11 people who had picks who went Jan's way. So that was kind of interesting.
It's hard to beat a guy who breaks your nose in the first round. I don't know.
Yeah, then the main event, we had Paulo Costa and Israel Adesanya. John, have either of you actually? But I'll ask John first. Have either of you ever done cupping?
I did it once or twice. I've done everything. I've tried everything, dude, because I'm a mess. I've done the cryo, done the cold tub, done the hot tub, done the cupping, done the dry needle, done the acupuncture. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel kind of good after that. But the next day I feel the same. So I'm like, I don't know if any of this actually does anything or not. But I know what you're going to say, because it left those marks. And I was looking at his leg and I went like, whoa. I was like, are those from those? Because he was eating his leg up early. And I was like, is that from the kicks? I was like, but it looks like the cupping things.
Yeah, I noticed the cupping.
I was trying to figure out if he was switching stances, because I was like, well, which leg is he hitting? I couldn't figure out if that was like from the kicks or if it was from cupping. You know? Yeah.
I know they do a lot of the cupping. You'll see in New Japan. You'll see the guys with the marks on their back. So I know it's kind of a popular thing, but you're starting to see it a little bit more in MMA. We see it from time to time. I dated a massage therapist who studied like all of these different cultural sort of medicines, holistic medicines. And so she was telling me about cupping, I don't know, this is probably like 15 years ago. And I'm kind of, not that I think, this is like something that's going to fix, me, but I'm always like looking at stuff like, oh, maybe this will make you feel better. I never did it, but it always seems super interesting. And then now you see it a lot more with some of this stuff. But I just didn't know if you had done it, but it sounds like you have. Justin, have you ever had to do anything like that?
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I had cupping sessions and acupuncture sessions. I had screwed up my elbow and my scapula, something like kind of near my neck. Some guy he yanked my head off.
Oh.
Anyway, the acupuncture, I guess you got to go kind of regularly for it to work, they say. I don't know. With my elbow, I think it helped with my elbow. Like, I don't know. I was having trouble. Like I would wake up in the morning and I'd have some elbow pain, but I don't know. I can't say if it worked or it didn't. I just haven't heard it since then. The cupping stuff, I don't know if I get it. They say it's for like your blood flow, like your chi.
I guess.
I don't know. My blood's the same, I think.
You should see bruises. It's all.
Yeah, I actually have a picture of because I was really, I looked like a leper. I had them all over my back and my neck, but it was especially.
Yeah, you usually see it like with the wrestlers. You usually see it like kind of like upper back area is where you see a lot of the cupping marks. But I'd never seen it on the calf.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'd never seen anybody do cupping on their legs. I mean, I guess you can, but it's generally for your back. And but I'm definitely not an expert on this, so generally I see it on people's backs.
But the thing that I thought was, maybe not smart, and maybe he really needed something done with his calves, but it was like target practice. Like he's just giving Adesanya targets to kick, and his left leg, there was real swelling and bruises at the knee area, and then you could just go all the way down, like upper calf, like shin, like lower calf, like he just getting drilled just constantly by Adesanya. John and I had talked about whether Costa was going to go and be aggressive and try and, really set a pace, or if he was going to do like what Yoel did and just kind of sit back. He kind of did in between, I guess. Like he didn't really throw his hands. He was way more patient. And so all that allowed Adesanya to do was just pile up the leg kicks. Like he was just able to just drill him constantly because Costa wasn't doing anything. His best shot was a nice little body kick. He caught him right in the chest. And then most of the rest of the round was just gamesmanship. Costa was pretending like nothing was hurting, and Adesanya was doing a lot of feints. Easy round, I thought, for Adesanya. And then the second round, there was just a much bigger talent difference in this fight than I originally thought. There was a moment in this fight where Adesanya was so good with his feints that Costa was like blocking stuff that wasn't coming. And then Adesanya was throwing stuff that Costa didn't see coming and couldn't block. So he was just all out of sorts. the technical striking, the counter striking. Then Adesanya lands a head kick. Looks like he cut Costa right on the eye, like maybe the right eye. All of a sudden, there was blood on Costa's chest, and I didn't know where it had come from, but I think it came from that kick, because then you saw Costa bleeding from the eye later. And then he misses. Adesanya lands just a counter left, puts him down, finishes him on the ground, and does rides him a little bit on the back, I guess, for the trash talking. And he just won very impressively. John, Adesanya, was he even better than you thought he was?
Yeah, I mean, I was told by people who are much smarter than me at this stuff that, it's not even a question. Adesanya's going to make him look stupid. He's going to pick him apart and make him look stupid. And, I mean, it was going to be the bull and the Matador. This was 100% the Matador. It couldn't have gone any worse for Paulo Costa. They both came out very composed, very relaxed, seemingly very confident. You didn't know if and I said, I was like, I wonder if something Costa might do just to screw with Adesanya would be to do the thing Romero did and literally just stand there just to get inside his head and try to goad him into attacking more so he doesn't counterpunch you. And it seemed like he was trying to goad him in. He was doing a lot of showmanship, and he'd kick him in the body and he'd make a motion like it didn't hurt or something. And he was doing a lot of kind of showmanshipy kind of stuff. And at one point he literally did just stand there like Romero, but not full on like Romero did, but he did it for 5 seconds or something. And Adesanya goes, Romero. I don't know if you saw that or not, but he literally stood there.
Yeah.
And Adesanya goes, oh, Romero. So he did it, but just he only did it a little bit. So I think he did want to goad him in, but he didn't fully commit in that direction. Yep. But he also didn't fully commit in the direction of going full. Maybe if he could do it over again, maybe he'd go full Wanderlei, Vitor Belfort, early 90s, and just go bananas and just pray that one of those. I don't remember a time where he got him backed up against the fence and was just winging bombs at him or anything, and Adesanya had to figure out how to get out of there. The only thing I can think is it was 5 rounds, so he was just going to keep composed and not blow his energy early. Maybe he should have just blown all his energy early. Maybe he should have just treated it like it's a 3-round, like it's a 1-round fight, and just go for it.
Well, I think you're right, because
I'm not sure what his strategy was. It seemed like he wanted to goad him in to engaging more, but that's not what Adesanya wants to do. So you're gonna have to try harder than that, whatever you were trying. And he just got picked apart, man. It was couldn't have got any worse for him. And then the finish came quick and it came ugly. And when he was on him, finished him at the end, it was Adesanya's strikes are so slick and perfect, and they're something out of a movie. That was the first time I've seen Adesanya really throwing punches with bad intentions. When he was finishing him on the ground at the end, it was mean. It was nasty. He was trying to hurt him. Fuck you, you talk shit. That was bad. And then, the theatrics at the end of a sexual nature were even more embarrassing for Costa. So it couldn't have gotten any worse for Costa. Couldn't have gotten any better for Adesanya. And I don't know what's next for him, but dude, I don't know who takes him out, because he looked. I mean, he was pretty much flawless tonight from everything I saw.
Yeah, the thing that you said about whether he should just let it all go and hope for the best. I mean, I think he probably gets knocked out a little earlier, but at the same time, what if he does connect? There could be something there. But yeah, he whatever the strategy was for tonight, sitting sort of in that middle ground of, Romero and normal Costa, it was just easy pickings for Adesanya. And as far as what's next for Adesanya, I think he mentioned Cannonier on the show. He kind of brought Cannonier's name up as a next guy, because he's already beat Whitaker, he's already beat Costa, so Cannonier would be next. Hermanson is in the mix, Darren Till, and then Brunson, and then he's already beat Gastelum. So yeah, it sounds like that would be what's next for him. And then, he's sort of in a similar situation, not quite what Jon Jones was in, because Jones was, cleaning up the division, but he's beat a lot of the guys in that division who rank highly. So, I mean, I don't know. He's mentioned going up to light heavyweight before. I don't know if his body is necessary. He seems to be still pretty thin. He doesn't have a lot of muscle mass. He seems pretty thin, and he's very athletic. I wonder if he loses some of that athleticism going up. But I don't know what else is left for him here unless he gets upset. But that'll be an interesting thing to discuss in the future for him. But Justin, any thoughts on that destruction?
Yep, Costa was an embarrassment tonight. He was really unimpressive. He looked like an amateur. He looked like an amateur, or Adesanya looked like an absolute master. And the story to this, to me, when I watch it as a fan, it was like a martial artist versus a fighter, which is a huge. Mm-hmm. To me, I think it's a. I don't want to say it's a problem, but it's an issue that in the UFC you got guys that they're there to fight, and they don't really have any moral codes, or not moral codes, but personal codes. Martial artists do. I think you could see that, and I think you could easily see who's real and who's fake in those situations. And I think Costa kind of came off as a total fake tonight. It's weird that this was a pay-per-view, because it was built like this was going to be this 5-round banger of a fight. And it was, I think, to be honest, I think the fight nights from a couple weeks back have been way more exciting cards than tonight's, for sure.
Yeah, I thought, last week's show was probably the main event, notwithstanding, probably a little bit better, but I still enjoyed this show. And there's something about UFC shows right now for me. Now, we talk about pro wrestling a lot, and how, you sort of peak for pay-per-views. The UFC has an interesting thing where they have cards just about every week. And if you pay attention to those cards, great, you'll get your action. Sometimes maybe not. But really, you're waiting for the pay-per-views. And sort of this like monthly peak is exactly when I'm waiting. It's almost like I can't wait to watch the UFC when the pay-per-views happen. And so, this show was solid. It wasn't a great card going in, but I was ready. I was ready to see a big-time fight. I was ready to pay for a big-time fight. And I still enjoy the builds of their main events. And it still does it for me. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Just every 4 weeks, I'm just all of a sudden ready to watch a main event, a big time main event on UFC, which is smart, because pro wrestling used to be like that. Other companies, John's company, really peaks about, every 2 months, every 2.5 months. And I think that works well too. But for whatever reason, the UFC is able to get these big main events in, and I'm enjoying them.
Tonight's card, it's like you said, it was exciting. The promotion for it, all the pre-match stuff, it was great. It was good. It was great promotion. I was excited for it, but I just wish, it delivered a little more. It was great. It was cool. And it's great that we're taking it apart and talking about it right now. But ultimately, it was Adesanya just tearing some guy up for a couple minutes. And that's really it. It's just it's going to be another market. It's going to be, was that his 20th win tonight? It's number 20. That's it.
So this is an interesting question that I just thought about from what you said, Justin. And I want to get John's thoughts on this as well, which is the art of sort of promoting. And, Paulo Costa has great wins on his record. He has really exciting wins on his record. So you can sell that to the public. And the UFC is really good at this, creating these videos and creating the hype. But if you sort of pulled, if you sort of looked at the Costa Adesanya fight from a hardcore perspective, I think you could have predicted exactly what had happened tonight. So I don't think it's a surprise to many that Adesanya was able to do what he did. But the promotion vehicle of Costa, you have he's a gigantic dude. He's super ripped. He's got some impressive wins. He's knocking guys out. You can actually sell that, but at the end of the day, what's actually inside the cage is one guy who's really, really good at this thing, taking apart this other guy who may not be as good as the UFC sold him. What do you think about that, sort of the promotion aspect of that, John? Because the UFC is really good at doing this, selling a fight that maybe is not as competitive as, John, the casual public thinks that it may be.
Well, I mean, it's a fight. Anything can happen. You never know what's going to happen. So no matter how convinced you are that this is going to be a one-sided drubbing, you can get. It only takes one punch kind of thing. You never know it. You never truly know what's going to happen. That's why this sport is so exciting, because the stakes are so high and like literally anything can happen. Like the 0-16 team is like not going to beat like the Patriots or whoever's the best football team. It's like pretty much not going to happen, right? But like if it's a fight, he's got 2 arms, 2 legs. He can knock you out. It could happen. But and even if you knew you were going in with like, there's probably not much of a chance. I mean, like a lot of times you pay to see a Floyd Mayweather or a Mike Tyson in their prime, or you tune in to see a Michael Jordan in their prime, or we go back and watch that Michael Jordan documentary that came out to relive, because remember, like that was the last time I watched basketball. It was like when I was a kid. I can't name a single fucking basketball player now other than LeBron James. So there's something to be like. So if Israel Adesanya turns out to be like one of the greatest of all time, retires undefeated and stuff like that, like a Floyd Mayweather or a Tyson or something, or a Michael Jordan, it's like, I don't care if he's probably going to run through this guy pretty easily. I'll still sit and watch it because it's like watching history, I'd be like, I remember when I used to watch like Adesanya like murk guys and shit. Like, so I almost don't have that much of a problem with it if I know I'm watching a guy that's something really special.
Yeah, the one that was.
Would you have any problem watching the what was the football team that was undefeated? The only football team that went undefeated.
I think the Miami Dolphins from like 1972 or something.
Yeah. Would you have any problem watching them defeat somebody 42-0? Because you'd be like, no, you're watching history, you're watching greatness. So there's something to that too.
I definitely see that point of view, and that's why when Anderson Silva was kind of running through guys, you're like, I should watch this because you're watching a guy who is so great. Floyd Mayweather is a good example as well. But maybe the best, and this we're going back 15 years, but I remember the UFC was promoting Chuck Liddell right before he beat Randy Couture in their third fight. So he was light heavyweight champion. They did Ultimate Fighter season 1, and then he fights Randy off of that show. Or was that the one? That may have been the one. But anyways. He's got to fight Jeremy Horn about 5 or 6 months before that. And Jeremy Horn, the thing that Jeremy Horn had on Chuck was in like Chuck's third ever fight, like Jeremy Horn triangle choked him out. And that was like Chuck's only loss for, like his first 14 fights or something like that. So they built up this hype video of like, Jeremy Horn, he may have Chuck's number. He's such a veteran. Chuck's still kind of, he just won the championship from Randy at UFC 252. And, Chuck was pretty safe with him, but he did knock him out in the 4th round. But at that time, I was like, oh, my God, like, this is like such a big fight. At the end of the day, it wasn't that big of a fight. But because they have the history, because they promoted it as such, it did feel like a big fight. And I think they're really good at that because if you put Adesanya and Costa from like a talent level and a style thing, too, it's really more about the style. Costa kind of everything that he does well fits right into, what Adesanya wants someone to do to him. You could come to that conclusion very early. Okay, Adesanya's probably going to win, but still, because of the hype, because the guys played their roles, they were, you saw that weigh-in where Costa brings the white belt, and Adesanya slaps it out of his hand. You're like, oh shit, these guys really, really don't like each other. And so I just thought it was a really brilliant promoting. Maybe the promoting was probably better than the actual fight was going to be, but I still enjoy when you get that style of promotion, because I love it and I think it works. And then, you know, you want to see more fights. You want to see big fights, fights that you feel are going to be worth your dollar, because we see a lot, right? We see a lot of fights. We have a lot of wrestling. There's a lot of boxing. We have so much to watch. You do need those things to kind of stand on their own. Yeah,
it's a storytelling, and you know, like tonight, whoever was rooting for Adesanya and was like, that Paul Costa, I can't stand him or whatever. And everybody in Australia and New Zealand, they're celebrating long into the night tonight because they're like, hell yeah, you know. That's why the stakes are so high, especially when it gets like real personal, you know, like it was with Covington and Woodley or whoever, whatever else fight you want to name, where it's like, oh, this is like personal. They're taking personal jabs at each other. It's high stakes, like. It's going to suck. Somebody's going to lose that fight, and it's going to suck. Like, the bragging rights are huge. Like, the stakes can be so high when you add a little bit of personal animosity on top of that, not to mention you can get your head kicked off. But it's stories. That's why, in a lot of ways, it's the same business. You know, like, Jeremy Horn wasn't nearly a number one contender. I don't even know if he was in the UFC at that time. I remember the fight you're talking about. But somebody said, you know, the only lost chuckouts on his record is like back when he was like an amateur and like Jeremy Horn beat him. What if we bring in Jeremy Horn and he, you know, and it's like he's avenging this loss. Like, he's not going to fucking beat Chuck. It's fine. You know, so it's like you made a story out of it. And it's like, oh, cool. And I remember it to this day. You know, like, it's the same thing as when Hoist Gracie came back to fight Matt Hughes. Why did I fucking beat Matt Hughes? A million fucking years. Fucking trounced. But like,
so great.
You made a story out of it, and I bought into it. Like, I was like, oh my God, what if Hoist comes back and defeats Matt Hughes? Like, I don't know. I bought into it. I want stuff like that to buy into. So, you know.
Yeah. So one of the best ones I've seen, and this was local. So this is in San Jose when Strikeforce was running. This is one of the first. For a little while there, off of my little website, which is more of a passionate thing than anything else, I was able to get some Strikeforce credentials because I was local. And you remember when Nick Diaz fought Frank Shamrock?
Oh, yeah.
Now, that was such a big fight. Now, it wasn't as big of a fight as some of the previous Frank Shamrock fights, because he was, you know, he had done such great promotion for that. But, you know, Nick was a star at that point. And I remember thinking, you know, the hype to this is so great. Frank would do these little like iPhone, you know, before the iPhone, but these little like in his home promos that he would put up on YouTube or whatever that were so great. And I remember it was probably, you know, talking to Dave. Dave was like, oh yeah, Frank's like a shell of himself. He is so beat up. I can't imagine he lasts very, very long in this fight. And you know, Nick beat him fairly easily. But that felt like such a big deal. But then going into it, I sort of knew what the actual thing was, but it didn't stop them from selling that fight, because you're selling the personalities and you're selling the promos and you're selling the star power. So that was another one of them where I was like, okay, like they're doing a really good job here. Even if I know a little bit closer to the situation what the real deal is, I still love that stuff. And it's really what I think the UFC does better than, you know, almost anybody, is just creating these stories that you just get into and you have some sort of emotional response to.
Yeah, or like Ken Tito for the third time. Really? Do we need to do it again? It's just going to keep getting worse. But I watched it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was all hyped. And I was on the edge of my seat. And it was exactly what we thought it was going to be. But every single time, I can't help it. You know, it's a good story, you know. How Strikeforce ruled, man. How good is Strikeforce?
I was also
let's bring Strikeforce back.
I know. Coker is a really fun guy to talk to too, because he's such a fan. Like, he's just so I remember. So one of my uncles, he and Coker were doing Taekwondo together back in the day. So when I had, I've interviewed Coker a couple of times with Dave, And I just mentioned, my uncle, and so he's like, "Oh, give me your phone. I want to call." Like Coker's just a really cool guy. So I don't know, his promoting Bellator is a little different. It's a little harder because the UFC is such a big deal. But just as like a dude to like hang out and watch fights with, he's awesome for that. But yeah, like Strikeforce, for whatever reason, I was able to get credentials for like some pretty big fights, like Gina and Cyborg. I definitely had a credential for. There's some Nick Diaz stuff that I had a credential for. I remember there was a fight where, after the show, Nick Diaz had beat somebody, but he had a really big cut over his eye. And so, we're back in the press conference, and it's so funny because some of these like Strikeforce shows, the fighters would walk in and people would start clapping. And I'm like, wait, what are you guys doing? Like, we're press. We're not supposed to clap for anybody. Like, you're not supposed to do that in, as media. But they were just like so big fans that these guys were just, so big of superstars. So Nick is like, just doesn't want to say anything. He's got this cut on his eye. It's leaking. He probably should be at the doctor, but he's not at the doctor because he's he's at the post fight press conference. He's not saying anything. People are asking him questions like 1-word answer, 2-word answer, like just not into it at all. He's like has like 3 different towels that he's soaking with blood because he won't, because he's got this eye thing. And all of a sudden, some dude comes up to him and he's like, "Hey," and he's got like one of those old school, everyone has a camera on their phone now, but he had like those little mini cameras that recorded video that you could just hook up to your computer real quick and grab the video. He's like, "Nick, I'm from like, MMA, blah, 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 blah.com. And, we've been a big fan of yours. We promote you. Can you cut a promo?" And this dude who wasn't saying anything jumps up like he's doing his, impersonation of like the baddest ass pro wrestler you've ever seen, cutting this promo for this guy's random blog that, probably wasn't seen by a lot of people. But just like crazy stuff would happen at Strikeforce all the time like that. Those few times I got credentialed to, like the Fedor and who's the guy that beat Fedor for the first time?
Fabricio.
Yeah, Verdum. I was there, but I was in like overflow media, so I literally have like my laptop like in the second deck of the Shark Tank in San Jose. Just fun memories for Strikeforce. I agree with you. Strikeforce is a lot of fun.
Oh, Diaz Daly, best round in MMA history, unquestioned.
Yeah. I still get to go to some of the Bellator shows because Meltzer gets credentials and he gets 2. And, Brian Alvarez lives in Portland or Seattle area. Sorry, not Portland. Justin lives in Portland. Brian lives in like Seattle area. So he can't fly. He's not going to fly out here for Bellator. So I just go as like Wrestling Observer, media. And Dave and I just hang out and watch fights. Those are some fun shows, though. Bellator Live, they do a really good job with just the ambiance and kind of trying to make it a show rather than just a normal card. Like there's stuff going on and music playing and it's a pretty fun time. But I think they got their work cut out for them for sure when it comes to continuing to run. I haven't been a big Bellator fan in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm hoping Hager fights here pretty soon. I would.
Yeah, I'd love to see. I'd love to see him.
I won't reveal anything, but I'm hoping let's get that going soon because I'm excited to chomping at the bit to see that. Yeah.
All right, so let's look ahead a little bit because they announced some of the card for UFC 254, and I know in our last show, John, you were talking about Khabib and Gaethje, and we mentioned sort of how Chandler fits into that whole thing. But this is an interesting show because it's not starting at the normal time. It's actually starting 3 hours earlier. So those of us on the West Coast, I think the main card actually starts at 4 rather than 7. So we'll have an early night with UFC, which rarely, and the East Coasters who often start watching this stuff at 10 in the evening, they'll have an early night too. So this is pretty interesting, and I think it's because I would imagine because Khabib is fighting, and it's they're fighting in the same place, but maybe the earlier start time, maybe for Khabib's fan base in Russia or wherever his main fan base is for them to see it at a better time, I'm guessing, because I don't know why else they would start the show 3 hours earlier.
I'm good with that. The earlier the better, man. I'm an old man. Let's get it done.
Same here. I love early show in the afternoon.
Let's get going.
Because then you can go out and do stuff or just hang out after that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to be hanging out after. We're not really doing stuff, but yeah, I agree with you. So the other thing that's interesting about this show is I think there are 6 fights on the main card that they have announced. So, usually it's 5. But for this show, unless things change, you have the one title fight, which is Khabib and Justin Gaethje, and then you have some good fights. I wouldn't consider a lot of these fights great fights, and there's a lot of guys on this early card who we're probably going to have to do some research on when it comes to who they are, and if we're picking fights and stuff that we're going to have to do some research on some of these guys. But yeah, you rarely see. I'm trying to think of when was the last pay-per-view that actually had 6 announced fights on it, instead of maybe back in the day they used to show fights from the prelims at the end of cards that ended early, but I can't remember a time when they announced a 6-fight card.
I hope it's locked in.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's 2020. That whole card could look entirely different by the time we get there. Let's just fucking hope and pray that Khabib and Gaethje make it. And nothing happens, and everything is good, and it's sooner than I thought. I thought it was in November. It's only a few weeks away.
Yeah, it's literally 4 weeks to today. Man,
yeah, I am stoked as a motherfucker for that.
There's a good fight night coming up before that too. The Brian Ortega and Korean Zombie.
Oh yeah, it feels like Brian Ortega hadn't fought in forever.
Yeah, I think that's the week before.
Yeah, I think that's actually a Sunday night on ESPN. ESPN Plus maybe, but it's a Sunday rather than a Saturday show. Yeah, so that'll be pretty fun. Cool. Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Ortega and Korean Zombie. They don't have that full card actually built out yet, but yeah. So that they've been trying to build that up for quite a while. But yeah, so there's going to be some good stuff. John, do you enjoy sort of the weekly MMA show that you can watch? It's not a big deal if you miss it. There's going to be some news, but just the idea of weekly MMA, if you have the time to watch it or not. Like, are you a fan of that, or would you rather them maybe not have as many cards?
For me, the more the better. A lot of times I don't have time or can't, or I'm not familiar with everybody on the card. Maybe just the main event or something, or if I got time, I'll check it out. Or if I'm just at home, I'll throw it on if I'm not doing anything or whatever. But, this summer, if you're a fight fan, has been like, as much as everything got screwed up in the world with COVID and everything, if you're a fight fan, all these Fight Island cards and all these Apex cards, and something about the empty arena has kind of changed the intensity of the fights, which has been interesting. So if you're a fight fan, it's been a hell of a summer. But pretty much every Saturday, I'm like, is there UFC this weekend? Oh, this weekend's Korean Zombie, or oh, this weekend's Michael Chandler, or whatever, Tony Ferguson, or whatever. Seems like there's something every weekend. So, it's a smorgasbord. So I feel like nowadays you couldn't be happier if you're a fight fan.
You got that Contender series too. That's pretty good.
Do you watch that stuff, Justin?
What's that?
Do you watch the Contender stuff?
I don't watch it weekly, but I caught up on it a couple weeks ago. There's some good fights. There's a guy that fought in the prelims tonight, William Knight, this guy from Hartford, big guy. He was just on it a couple weeks ago. So I think it's cool if you want to preview some of the prelim or undercard fights for upcoming fights, because I think it's like a feeder system for the Abu Dhabi and Apex cards. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I haven't checked it out, but I heard that some of the guys are really going for it.
Yeah,
they're literally fighting for a contract.
Exactly, so, fighting for their job.
Kind of like early Ultimate Fighter. They're really going for it.
If I would recommend one episode, I forget which one it was. I think it was last week, where the guy Jordan Williams, he got cut last year. He didn't make it last year on the Contender. You guys remember that story when Dana, there was a kind of a controversial finish on one of the fights, and he got another chance. And basically, spoiler, he came in and he knocked this guy out in 2 seconds. It was a great story. I think it's from a couple weeks ago. Jordan Williams. I don't know. Somebody from Fight Game can help me out. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know because I don't watch it, but I know, the diehard fans, guys like Ryan Frederick. I've named him on this show before. Who's he's pretty close on the inside. He knows stuff that's going to happen, and his Monday column on our website. He's like a couple weeks ahead of some of the main guys on stuff. So he watches it. I know Jason Hagholm, who's also on our website, he watches it because those guys are like diehard when it comes to this stuff.
I've seen Ryan all over tonight's broadcast, his tweets, his round scores.
He told me he was getting a lot of crap for having Dawodu win the first round against ZT. He said, there was like 3 or 4 people who just like were yelling at him for having actually Dawodu win that round. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Just block those guys. This is why you gotta be careful with your social media, or just be like John and just have like 700 million followers and like tweet like 2 or 3 times. Like that's the real way to do it.
Yeah, it's not for me. Every once in a while, some outgoing information that is pertinent to promote or something, or if I'm asked to promote something specifically, but it's not for me.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy the way people use it too. There's supposedly some like Netflix doc about social media that everyone's been watching. That
Social dilemma.
Oh yeah,
watch. Yeah.
Social.
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Did you watch it?
Yeah. Oh, I seen it. Yeah,
Good?
It'll freak you out.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, the world is just going to shit.
Yeah, I'm kind of against. I don't really want to watch it because, I use my Twitter. We have our Facebook group. I enjoy using those, and I feel like I am disciplined in using them, and I know how to use them, and I know how to, not get tied up and stuff. But I'm going to watch this thing and go, oh no, I need to get rid of all my accounts, and so I don't want to watch it yet.
Sounds like a bummer.
All right. All right. So just a couple of more notes about the shows. So next week we have another show coming from Yas Island. This one is on ESPN. So this is not on ESPN Plus, but it is Holly Holm and Irene Aldana. Aldana knocked out Caitlin Vieira. That was Caitlin's loss before, was to Aldana. So Aldana gets Holly Holm. And Duran DeMay and Juliana Pena is also on this fight. But how's this for a fight in 2020? Carlos Condit against Court McGee. I had no idea either of those guys were still fighting.
I love it. I love it.
Are they in shape? Have they fought recently? Are they active, or is this just like a?
So Condit last fought almost 2 years ago. He's on a 5 fight losing streak.
Nice.
Lost to Michael Chiesa in a couple years ago, December 2018. So I'm thinking this is like a comeback fight for him because I thought he was hanging him up. And then Court McGee, he last fought last year. So it'll be almost a year for him. He's coming off of lost 4 out of his last 5, and he lost to Sean Brady in his last fight. So, I mean, it's 2 guys who are just, it's got to be like a, loser leaves town match or something with these guys.
Oh, bring it on.
It's sentimental favorites, man. I can't. That'd probably be the fight I'm most interested to watch on the entire card, just from a sentimental. It's like watching Diego Sanchez. You want to. Maybe, you never know if maybe this is their last fight. They're going to retire. Maybe they'll go out with a win. Carlos Condit just got his soul sucked out of him in that Robbie Lawler fight.
Oh yeah,
he should have hung him up right there. But
I wouldn't mind seeing UFC with a Masters division, like an over certain age, like over 40, bring in some of the old guys, spice up the card a little.
Yeah, maybe a little different rules, make it a little safer,
or like shorter rounds, or
like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be into that.
I think a lot of people.
I mean, I think you could move certain guys into that, but the problem is I think for those guys, they'll be like, okay, well, what am I going to get paid?
That's true.
And if
too.
if you change the pay scale based on that division, I don't think those guys would be too interested. But the opposite side of that is you could get, or not Frank, but Ken Shamrock, fighting at the end of his career against all of these older guys and, just looking horrendous. So you'd have to also put a limit on that, on what you could do when it comes to stuff like that.
Well, I guess that's why why they have the grappling events. Sometimes they have big matchups between like big names, like the Polaris and the or what's the one, the Quintet. Mm-hmm. We see fun matchups. But it's just grappling. Nobody's getting their face smashed in. Man, maybe one day they'll do that, and on a fight night they'll have, we're gonna have this fight and this fight. We're also gonna have a special grappling match between Ken Shamrock and Carlos Condit or some whatever. I don't know, some weird shit like that. I don't know. That could be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested. I actually like the quintet idea, and I want to go to a quintet show. When we can start going back to shows. I heard they're really fun, but still, like, how do you? Ultimately, you got to make money on them, and I'd be interested in if they have ideas to do that, because that kind of stuff is fun, and you get to see names and people you haven't you grew up watching or whatever. But it's so hard to sell to this audience. I think just the idea of grappling.
There's going to be one next month actually in Tokyo.
Oh, is there?
Sakuraba's holding it. Quintet
Nice.
5.
Wow. Any name U.S. guys?
No, I think it's mostly Japanese fighters.
Probably getting into that country.
Although I did hear that they're going to do a Sakuraba versus, I don't know if you guys know Takashi Sugiura. He's he's the Noah. He's kind of like a stocky, amateur wrestler background. He was in Noah early on. They're going to have a Greco-Roman Iron Man match. They're going to do Greco-Roman wrestling rules, and they're going to have a pro wrestling Greco-Roman match. I don't know the details, but that was just announced, I think, a week or so ago. Seems interesting.
I'll watch anything Sakuraba does. I'm already sold.
I think it's going to be on UFC Fight Pass. I think those shows are on the Fight Pass channel.
I'll watch Sakuraba make pancakes. I don't care.
It's like Polaris. It's like a team. It's like a team thing. So it's like one guy loses, the other guy comes in, and the rules are more complex than that. But it's cool.
All right. So after the home Aldana fight, then we have Marlon Moraes against Corey Sandhagen, which should be a really good fight. That is UFC on ESPN Plus. So that will be the following week, and then we mentioned the Ortega and Korean Zombie fight, and then the pay-per-view. So yeah, there's going to be some good stuff coming up, and we'll see what happens with Khabib and Gaethje. I think that's going to be pretty big. Obviously, it's Khabib's comeback fight. He hasn't fought in a while. He's been out. Obviously, his father passed away, so there's stuff there for him. And Gaethje is one of the COVID-19 stars. Made really that fight with what was it? Ferguson? Who did he fight?
Ferguson.
Yeah, Ferguson. That fight. That they did big business, and a lot of it was because there were no sports going on, so people were chomping at the bit to pay for something to watch. But still, I think he made himself into a star off of that fight. And it's gonna be a big show. So we will look forward to that.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be at least as big as the Ferguson fight, because I don't think you could watch the Ferguson fight and then not want to see him complete the transaction, so to speak, and get the real belt with Khabib. I feel like it has to be at least as big. I could be wrong. It's not my forte to predict that stuff, and I don't really care one way or the other, but I feel like it has to be just as big,
Yeah. So, all right. So that is it from here. So UFC 253 recap. I want to thank Jon for coming back. We didn't scare him away, Justin. He came back with us. And also, Justin, appreciate you and your internet for hanging in there for us.
Sweet new mic.
And the new mic. Yes, you sound really good. So good stuff on that. But for Jon and Justin, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.